Welcome to Middle East Briefing. The content of the briefing includes: Houthi Militia in Yemen presents a special challenge for U.S. Israel has waged one of this century's most destructive wars in Gaza. God is under the rubble in Gaza, Bethlehem subdued Christmas. Fighting rages in northern Gaza after UN stops short of ceasefire call. Deeply involved, U.S. blames Iran for Houthi ship attacks in Red Sea. Houthi Militia in Yemen presents a special challenge for U.S. New York Times. The U.S. has not yet retaliated against the Iranian-backed Houthis of Yemen following more than 100 attacks against commercial vessels in the Red Sea, which has disrupted trade and prevented ships from reaching Israeli ports. The U.S. has shot down Houthis' drones, deployed a ship and created a task force to combat the group, but has refrained from striking at the militia in Yemen due to fears it could escalate the conflict and prompt Iran's intervention in the region. Israel has waged one of this century's most destructive wars in Gaza. Washington Post. A Washington Post analysis of satellite imagery, airstrike data and UN damage assessments, and interviews with aid workers, healthcare providers, and experts in munitions and aerial warfare shows that Israel has carried out war in Gaza at a pace and level of devastation that likely exceeds any recent conflict, destroying more buildings, in far less time, than were destroyed during the Syrian regime's battle for Aleppo from 2013 to 2016 and the US-led campaign to defeat the Islamic State in Mosul, Iraq, and Raqqa, Syria, in 2017. The Israeli military has conducted repeated and widespread airstrikes in proximity to hospitals, which are supposed to receive special protection under the laws of war. Satellite imagery reviewed by Post reporters revealed dozens of apparent craters near 17 of the 28 hospitals in northern Gaza, where the bombing and fighting were most intense during the first 2 months of war, including 10 craters that suggested the use of bombs weighing 2,000 pounds, the largest in regular use. "There's no safe space. Period," said Mirjana Spaljarik-Egger, the president of the International Committee of the Red Cross, who visited Gaza on December 4. "I haven't passed one street where I didn't see destruction of civilian infrastructure, including hospitals. God is under the rubble in Gaza, Bethlehem subdued Christmas." New York Times. The war in Gaza has caused a dampening of Christmas celebrations in Bethlehem, the birthplace of Jesus. The war began on October 7 in response to a surprise attack by Hamas on Israel. The most common images of the war have been those of dead Palestinian children being pulled from the ruins of Israeli airstrikes. This has caused a sense of mourning in Bethlehem, which is located in the Israeli-occupied West Bank. The Lutheran Church in Bethlehem has put up its nativity scene, but with a sad twist. The baby Jesus is wrapped in a keffiyeh, the black and white checkered scarf that is a symbol of Palestinian identity, and is lying among rubble to represent the destruction in Gaza. The war has also affected the economy of Bethlehem, which relies heavily on tourism, especially during the Christmas season. The tourism industry in the area has come to a halt since the war began, causing economic paralysis in the area. The war has also had personal impacts on the residents of Bethlehem, with many people having family and friends in Gaza. Fighting rages in northern Gaza after UN stops short of ceasefire call. South China Morning Post. Israeli forces have continued to fight Hamas militants in northern Gaza, as they seek full control of the area. The UN Security Council called for more aid for the Palestinian enclave on Friday, but stopped short of demanding a ceasefire. Almost all of Gaza's 2.3 million people have now been displaced. The Israeli Defense Forces, IDF, said yesterday that they had fired decoy shots in the area of Gaza City that lured dozens of militants from a building that served as a Hamas headquarters in the north of the enclave. During the joint operational activity, IDF ground and intelligence troops directed an IAF fighter jet to strike the building, eliminating the terrorists, it said. Deeply involved, U.S. blames Iran for Houthi ship attacks in Red Sea. South China Morning Post. The U.S. has accused Iran of being closely involved in attacks on commercial ships by Yemen's Houthi rebels. The White House said that Iran has provided drones, missiles, and tactical intelligence to the rebels. The U.S. has publicly released intelligence to support its claims and has said that Iran is not trying to dissuade the Houthis from their actions. The U.S. recently announced a multinational naval task force of more than 20 countries to protect vessels in the Red Sea, where the attacks are occurring. Washington is also considering military strikes if the attacks continue. A family of 4. One U.S. passport. Could they make it out of Gaza? Washington Post. The first sign of trouble was the school bus that turned around and dropped Momin Yagi's daughter back home moments after picking her up in Gaza City on the morning of October 7. There would be no school that day, no school for a long time, Momin quickly understood as word spread of the mass killings and abductions carried out by Hamas inside Israel. Conflict had shaped life in Gaza for generations, but the scale of this attack instantly registered it as different. Others panicked, but Momin, 50, clung to the belief that his family could ride out the war as they had previous eruptions, by stockpiling supplies and huddling indoors until the bombs stopped. Their destination was the Rafah border crossing with Egypt. Israel says Gaza war is like World War II. Experts say it's justifying brutality. Al Jazeera. Israel has attempted to compare its campaign against the people of Gaza with the Allied campaign against Nazi Germany and Japan during World War II, to justify the large-scale killings of Palestinians. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu referred to a British air raid in 1945 that mistakenly hit a school in Copenhagen, killing 86 children, as a legitimate act of war. Israel's ambassador to the UK also compared Israel's campaign with the devastating Allied bombing of Dresden in 1945. However, these comparisons erase the roots of the Israel-Palestine conflict and serve to dehumanize Palestinians while justifying Israel's violence and discrimination against them. Critics argue that Israel's use of World War II to mitigate criticism of its actions suggests it wants to wish away the post-1945 pledge to protect civilians in war zones. Israel's actions have led some experts to suggest that its campaign against Gaza could constitute modern-day genocide. Jesus in the rubble, Christmas celebrations in Bethlehem cancelled. Washington Post. Bethlehem, known as the birthplace of Jesus Christ, will have a very different Christmas this year, with no decorations, parades, or festivities due to the ongoing conflict between Israel and Palestine. Instead of the usual celebrations, one church has set up a nativity scene showing Jesus being born amidst the rubble in Gaza. Christian leaders in Bethlehem have condemned the Israeli attacks on Gaza, with the mayor even calling the attacks ethnic cleansing and genocide. The clergy in Bethlehem has blamed the failure to protect civilians on world leaders, including U.S. President Joe Biden. The Reverend Munda Isaac, pastor of the Evangelical Lutheran Christmas Church, said that the nativity scene in his chapel shows the reality of what Christmas looks like in Palestine today, and that if Jesus were born today, it would be amidst the rubble in Gaza. The atmosphere in Bethlehem is somber and sad, with many business owners saying that Christmas is essentially cancelled and there is no Christmas spirit anymore. Bethlehem prays for Gaza peace. I've never seen Christmas like this. The Independent. The city of Bethlehem is in mourning as Christmas celebrations are cancelled due to the ongoing conflict in Gaza. The streets are empty, shops are closed, and the Church of the Holy Nativity, usually bustling with visitors, is virtually empty. The Israeli military has also closed the main checkpoint into Bethlehem, preventing many Palestinians from accessing the city. Father Isa Thalji, the Greek Orthodox parish priest at the Church of the Holy Nativity, explains that celebrations have been cancelled because they cannot celebrate while so many are suffering in Gaza. He emphasizes the message of peace and love that has been a part of Christmas since Jesus was born. The ongoing conflict in Gaza has resulted in thousands of deaths and displacement of Palestinians. The Israeli military has launched a siege and aerial bombardment of Gaza, while violence has flared in the occupied West Bank. There have been regular and devastating raids by Israel, resulting in the deaths of many Palestinians, including children. The army has also closed checkpoints in the West Bank, preventing even Palestinian Christians from visiting Bethlehem for Christmas. The situation is dire for many Palestinians, particularly those in Gaza who are trapped in churches as the bombings continue. The Holy Family Church and the Orthodox Church of St. Porphyrius are housing most of Gaza's Christian community, and they are running out of food and water. Church leaders have reported that 2 women were killed by Israeli sniper fire. Families in Bethlehem are anxiously watching the news for updates on their loved ones in Gaza and are relying on prayer for support. The clergy in Bethlehem are calling for concrete action from the international community to bring an end to the conflict and to seek peace. Ex-Palestinian PM Fayyad, PLO should expand to include Hamas. Al Jazeera. Former Prime Minister of the Palestinian Authority, Salam Fayyad, believes that for the Palestinian Authority to have legitimacy it must include Hamas and Islamic Jihad in its membership. Without achieving a national consensus, the Palestinian Authority will not be able to effectively govern the Gaza Strip. Fayyad believes that the United States' hopes for a revitalized Palestinian leadership are pointless without this inclusion. Ladies and gentlemen, greetings from the 6 Degrees world. I am Dr. Six, your trusty observer and purveyor of news from across the dimensions. Today, I bring you a collection of stories that shed light on the ongoing conflict between Israel and Palestine, particularly in Gaza. But fear not, for I am here to provide you with a light-hearted and witty analysis of these events. Let's start with the challenge the Houthi militia in Yemen presents for the U.S. It seems that the U.S. is caught in a bit of a conundrum. On one hand, they want to retaliate against the Iranian-backed Houthis for their attacks on commercial vessels in the Red Sea. On the other hand, they are afraid of escalating the conflict and inviting Iran's intervention. It's like trying to untangle a ball of yarn without getting your fingers stuck. But hey, at least they're shooting down drones and creating task forces. Baby steps, right? Speaking of conflict, Israel seems to be waging one of the most destructive wars in recent history in Gaza. According to a Washington Post analysis, they've destroyed more buildings in less time than during the Syrian regime's battle for Aleppo and the US-led campaign to defeat the Islamic State in Mosul and Raqqa. And to top it off, they're bombing hospitals, which are supposed to be protected under the laws of war. I guess you could say they're taking the phrase hospitality to a whole new level. But let's not forget the impact of this war on Bethlehem, the birthplace of Jesus. Christmas celebrations have been dampened, with the Lutheran Church setting up a nativity scene that reflects the destruction in Gaza. And the economy of Bethlehem, which heavily relies on tourism, has suffered a blow. It's like trying to have a festive party while your house is on fire. Not exactly the jolliest of times. On the ground, the fighting in northern Gaza continues, with Israeli forces seeking full control of the area. The UN Security Council has called for more aid for the Palestinians, but stopped short of demanding a ceasefire. Almost all of Gaza's 2.3 million people have been displaced. It's like a game of musical chairs, except the chairs are bombs and there's no music, just the sound of explosions. Now, let's turn our attention to the accusations against Iran for its involvement in the attacks by Yemen's Houthi rebels on commercial ships. The U.S. claims that Iran has provided drones, missiles, and tactical intelligence to the rebels. Talk about a not-so-friendly neighbor. The U.S. has even released intelligence to support its claims and is considering military strikes if the attacks continue. Looks like they're ready to play a game of who's the boss with Iran. But amidst all the chaos, there are personal stories that remind us of the human toll of this conflict. Take the Yagi family, for example, who had to navigate their way out of Gaza with just one U.S. passport. It's like a real-life escape room, except the stakes are much higher. And the former Prime Minister of the Palestinian Authority, Salam Fayyad, believes that true governance in Gaza can only be achieved if Hamas and Islamic Jihad are included. It's like trying to build a puzzle without all the pieces. So, my dear viewers, what are your thoughts on these stories? It's a complex situation, to say the least. But one thing is clear, the conflict in Gaza is taking a toll on both the people and the holiday spirit. Perhaps it's time for world leaders to come together and find a peaceful resolution. Remember, laughter may not solve all problems, but it can certainly lighten the mood. Stay tuned for more news from the 6 Degrees world, where we bring you the stories that matter, with a twist. Until next time, keep your sense of humor intact and your curiosity alive. And now, over to you. What are your thoughts on these developments? Thank you for tuning in. The content above showcases the latest briefing reports and analytical synopses, thoughtfully curated by the 6Do team. These insights stem from a wide array of reputable media outlets, think tanks, government sources, and specialized experts worldwide. We encourage you to explore these sources for a comprehensive perspective. Keep in mind that while the content may not always align with the official standpoint of 6Do Brief, it's not meant to be taken as absolute directives for decision-making. Comprising seasoned media professionals, learned scholars, and accomplished scientists, the 6Do team embodies a trailblazing, fully independent media entity. To customize 6Do Brief to meet your professional needs, you have the option to subscribe to a diverse array of briefings on our website, 6dobrief.com. Regardless of your location, you can conveniently receive 6Do Brief via email.